guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, HOA sued me for parking my pickup in my driveway. I defended myself and won. HOA lost $280,000. TLDR. I moved to an HOA and get permission to park my truck in my driveway. Years later they sue me for it, saying that it is ruining the beauty of the neighborhood. I win the lawsuit, but they appeal, making it drag on for over a year in a legal battle. Finally, I win again, and they are forced to pay out big for my legal fees. They end up trying to turn everyone against me by raising HOA fees and pointing the finger at me like it is my fault. I know that probably half of you are looking over the title again to see if you actually read it right. Unfortunately, you did read it right, and it isn't a typo either. I was actually sued by my HOA for parking my own truck in my own driveway on my own property. I guess I should give a little bit of context though, because it wasn't just like a lawsuit was dropped into my lap out of the blue. I live in a pretty nice area where most people have nice and usually expensive cars. Hell, I have my own BMW that mainly my wife uses to drive around. Working as an electrician though, I need more room than a normal car could give me, so for that I have my trusty pickup truck. I knew right away that this might have been a problem for the HOA, so I filled out a form and actually ended up getting permission easily to park my truck in my driveway. Well, that was years ago when I first moved in, and there was never any end date mentioned to that permission. I was allowed to park in my driveway, so that's what I did. I mean, really, I think most people would agree that is what the driveway is there for, and shouldn't matter what kind of vehicle it is. Not to them though, because a few years later I got a letter from the HOA telling me that I needed to stop parking my truck in my driveway. I was honestly kind of shocked at this and wondering what they expected me to do about it. I wasn't going to put it in my garage because we used that mainly for storage, and trying to get the truck to fit in addition to that would have been a pain. I have a feeling though that by this point some of you are wondering why the hell was the HOA even getting a basis for telling me that I couldn't park my truck in the driveway. For that I only have kind of a half answer that comes in the form of keeping the neighborhood appearance a certain way. If you have ever lived in a neighborhood like this or passed one, you would see all the cars and I guess assume that it was a safe neighborhood, and the people were friendly. Honestly, I don't really understand that, but I totally get if some people do. My truck though I guess was an eyesore in comparison, and the look of it might make some people think it was an unsavory neighborhood. Honestly, I think that those rules were being used the wrong way by telling me I couldn't park my truck, and also seemed kind of discriminatory. I just would love to think what would happen if some family had a big van because one of the members were in a wheelchair and the HOA told them they couldn't park in the driveway. Back to reality though, I was clearly annoyed about this and had nowhere else to even park my truck. I basically kept doing what I was doing and letting the angry letters go from my mailbox to my garbage can. It's my property and it isn't like my truck is hurting anybody or being offensive, it's just a truck that honestly was cleaner than some of the people's expensive fancy cars. Finally, though, I was sent a letter not by the HOA but from their lawyers that I was being sued for unpaid fines and breaking the bylaws. I guess the fines were those papers that I kept throwing out without even paying much attention to after the first few. I was actually surprised that they were trying to sue me for it instead of just letting it go and realizing that it wasn't doing anything wrong. When we went to court, it actually went a lot faster than I thought it would. I was expecting them to take a ton of time making up stories and trying to prove that I was a neighbor from hell that deserved to be fined and kicked out of my house or something. Instead, they were actually really honest and showed that they interpreted the rules for neighborhood beauty as having my truck needing to be parked in a garage. Then I talked about how there was nothing specifically about trucks in those bylaws, so they are taking the words and twisting it. It was found in my favor and the HOA was actually going to have to pay my legal fees, which was totally awesome for me because I thought it would teach them a lesson. Instead, they decided that they would appeal the decision and take it to a higher court. The entire time between the two cases, by the way, I kept receiving letters about fines and things like that. I kept ignoring them and spoke to my lawyer, and he said the best thing to do was avoid the HOA until court. They couldn't do anything to me until the case was resolved one way or another. It took over a year for us to get back into court and them to give their whole thing over again. This time I even was able to find the original approved application to park my truck in the driveway and that the HOA technically approved it. Since it didn't show any type of expiration date and the truck was the same exact one, this fact kind of shot them in the foot. They could argue about what they bylaws meant between lawyers all day, but they couldn't argue that I had permission technically. Finally, in the end, I was able to stop being bothered by the HOA. They had to pay a grand total of $280,000 to me, all of which was lawyer fees from over that last year. Still, to be honest, the whole thing felt like a huge waste of time. I know that some people are fighting their HOA to do things to their lawns or get permission to make their houses bigger by adding an extension or something. Maybe if I was fighting for one of those things, I would feel a little bit better, but keep in mind what I had just spent over a year in a legal battle to accomplish. Because of the ruling of 2 different judges, I was now allowed to park my truck on my own property. It really feels bittersweet when you have to fight and win just to do something that pretty much everyone with a driveway does on the daily. The only thing that really changed though was that now the HOA wanted to take out its revenge on me by raising the HOA yearly fees for the entire neighborhood to make up for the loss on paying for my lawyer. Even though it is a well-off neighborhood, nobody was happy about this price increase, and they decided to direct all of that anger to me. Very subtly pointing out to everyone in the neighborhood that they needed to get the extra money because I took everything they had in a lawsuit. They didn't want to give the details of the fact they were actually the ones suing me and instead made me into the bad guy. A few neighbors listened to my side and agreed with me, but the rest mostly don't want anything to do with me anymore. The HOA went and ruined my reputation after I won the case, but I know in the future they are going to get what is coming to them. The next story is titled, Landlord Built Wall Over Gas Meter, Gas Company Fining Tenant. New York. We moved into an apartment not know where the gas meter was, assuming it was in the basement, which we are directly above. 6 months into our lease we were contacted by the gas company, Edison, saying the gas meter was in our unit and they needed access to it for an upgrade or we will be fined. That is when we discovered our landlord had built a wall over the ducting gas meter. The landlord is refusing to take the wall down. We explained that to Edison and they said it was our responsibility to provide access, and the wall is between us and our landlord. No, it's between us and the ducting gas meter. Until they can replace the old meter, we will be charged $100 a month. I asked them if they would come and take the wall down if we have them access to our unit. They said they didn't have the authority to do so. I'm not sure how else I'm supposed to give access besides taking a sledgehammer to the wall myself. What are my legal options here? This seems crazy to me, and I'm pissed to be charged for a situation I have absolutely no control over. Update. After getting stonewalled by the gas company's customer service, I found the personal cell of the SVP of Customer Relationships and called her. Her office got on it and is having an inspector come out next week. After they document the situation, I will contact code enforcement. I've been extremely tired lately. The reason I am tired is we have a colicky newborn baby. So, we are bracing for the possibility of moving with a newborn, and completely forgot to mention that there is a small peephole in the wall you can read the meter through. I can't find the emergency shutoff valve either anywhere in the kitchen or in the part of the wall I can see into. I think it's farther up in the wall. Landlord built a wall over the gas meter, and it gets worse. This is unfortunately not an update on how the situation resolved. New and interesting legal problems are coming up. Following the advice of commenters on the original post, we called 311 and got both a referral for a free consult with a housing lawyer and filed a DOB complaint. An hour after we filed the complaint, our landlord called us fully freaking out. He said according to the terms of our lease we would be liable for any of his legal fees including the fines from the DOB, which he said would be tens of thousands. He then accused us of making all the other DOB complaints on the building, which include leaky gas pipes and our fire escapes being death traps. Nice to know. He told us it would be in our best interest not to let the DOB inspector in. So, we let the building inspector in. The wall covering the gas meter is only the tip of the "wow, you really shouldn't do that with gas pipes" iceberg. The building inspector filed a violation and gave our landlord 48 hours to fix all the issues. The lawyer we did a consult with laughed when we told him all this. We called him back after the first consult. He said his retainer is $250, and we are waiting until the end of the day to decide if we should hire him. Our best case scenario at this point would be for the landlord to do enough to keep the unit inhabitable for another month and then let us out of our lease in mid-August. We used documents shared on my first post to find all the other obvious code violations in the unit and informed the landlord about all of them at once. Hopefully we can annoy him into letting us quit our lease. Any additional advice would be welcome. We are still processing how bonkers this situation is. Edit. The landlord just sent us a bill for $7,500. Update. Landlord built a wall over our gas meter, and it's over. Hi. I am the person whose landlord built a wall over the gas meter, and then tried to force me to pay their DOB fines. I wanted to update because the way this shook out was legally interesting. After my last post, we hired a lawyer to review our situation and dig into some public records. My landlord took down the offending wall in front of the meter but was still demanding the $7,000. We requested records from the Housing and Community Renewal Division, and the DOB, and also from some other databases my lawyer had access to. Here are all the ways my landlord done fucked up. He improperly filed paperwork to set up the LLC he used to hide his ownership of our building from tenants. He improperly handled funds for our security deposit. He violated the warranty of habitability and would need to pay us back at least 30% of all the rent we had paid, about $8,000. He appears to have illegally deregulated our unit, which was rent stabilized before he bought the building, and would be liable under state law for the overcharged rent and treble damages, unknown exact amount but a lot. He had retaliated against a good faith DOB complaint with an illegal fine, and any attempt on his part to collect it would entitle us under state law to treble damages, about $20,000. Despite what he believed, in NY the clause that we have to pay his legal fees also applies to him if the judge ruled in our favor, another few $1,000s. All that being said, we were still bound by the terms of our lease, which required us to find a new tenant to take our place if we wanted to leave. The lawyer told us that if we just left, a unilateral surrender of the unit, state law said our landlord had a duty to mitigate, that is to fill the unit as quickly as possible and charge us only for the hopefully short time it was empty. However, all evidence points towards my landlord being a greedy bastard, and we expected that a unilateral surrender, while the most ethical option from our perspective, we didn't want to convince another innocent person to live here, would likely lead to a long legal battle. Our lawyer was delighted by the prospect of savaging this man in court, but acknowledged going to housing court could make renting again more difficult for us. We were pretty conflicted about how to proceed. It really feels like, when you are dealing with somebody like my landlord, you should just be able to go in front of a judge and say, "Your Honor, duck this guy." But unfortunately contract law still protects a-holes. So here is a bit of backstory not in my last posts. I've been living with a disability for the last 20 years. We don't have to get into details, but it's psychiatric and neurological, and when I first got diagnosed my medical team basically said, LMAO yeah, you're ducked. Maybe apply for Social Security. Despite that, I have managed to work full-time at a demanding job, and my symptoms have been under control. Then I got pregnant. I had a horrible pregnancy with painful complications during as well as postpartum. I was hospitalized multiple times. And I was also dealing with problems at my job. You can look at my post history, it's been a shit Sunday of a year. By the time the situation with my landlord came to a head, my health was extremely dire and getting worse. My parents, who I have a great relationship with, they are the top shelf of boomers, offered to take us in while I got back on my feet, but we had to break our lease first. I didn't include any of this sob story in my first posts because it wasn't legally relevant. Or that is what I thought. Turns out NY has had a law on the books for a while that if an elderly person's health deteriorates, they are allowed to break their lease without penalty if they are moving either to a care facility or to live with family. In 2019 the state amended that law to include disabled people. I discovered this law by accident. I never told my lawyer about my health problems, and when I brought it to him, he said I should be covered under the law. I got letters from my doctors outlining my disability as well as a letter from my parents confirming I would be living with them, rent-free, for 6+ months, and detailing what care they would be providing. My lawyer sent those along to my landlord, along with a letter explaining that my right to move under state law trumped his lease, and if he tried to haul me into housing court the judge was going to get the full list of all his sins, and we would counterclaim for upwards of $30,000. He caved immediately and let us use our security deposit for last month's rent. Our security deposit was several $100s less than our monthly rent. We moved out this week and so far, have heard nothing from our former landlord. Our lawyer is on standby, the matter seems settled. So, an unsatisfactory conclusion by Reddit standards. I found my post on some repost subs when I started getting random followers. Sorry to not deliver on juicy drama. But we wanted to avoid going to court. My parents have a large house in New England on a wooded lot in a quiet suburb, and already our quality of life is 1000% better. I wake up every morning and sit with my dog and baby on a big porch looking out at trees. My son actually got to touch grass for the first time in his life. All of our friends and family live here, and after many months of being sick and isolated, I'm planning Sunday dinners. This was the absolute best outcome for me and my family. Thanks for listening.